Radical Islam. While Barack Obama this week angrily derided Donald Trump's demand that the President of the United States use the term radical Islam, he says, look, it's just a political term. It doesn't really mean anything. President was also downplaying ISIS and the threat of ISIS. Meanwhile, the CIA director was telling a congressional committee exactly the opposite. So is the term radical Islam legit or inflammatory? And in a context for all Western nations, including Canada, is it necessary? Is it a valuable term to be using? Dr. Zuhdi Jasser is the founder of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, former U.S. Navy Lieutenant Commander, and author of The Battle of the Soul for Islam. Zuhdi, the term radical Islam, should the president have been using the term as Donald Trump and others have long demanded, or is it irrelevant?
Oh, it's very relevant, and I think the president knows it. The entire strategy of Homeland Security is focused not on radical Islam, but on violent extremism. And, he can dismiss it and mock people for saying it's just about what you call it. But like treating any disease, the diagnosis matters. And when you look at Director Comey saying, well, yeah, we interviewed the guy twice, and he really hadn't been doing anything illegal, and everything seemed to have been done right. The reason he can say that is the entire radar, the axis, the center of gravity of Homeland Security and the Bureau is about whether these guys have a penchant for violence, whether they're planning to kill anybody. It has nothing to do with any of the ideas, the precursor ideas of militant Islamism, which is political Islam. So if you're fighting violent homophobia, you're going to look at nonviolent homophobia. If you're fighting violent anti-Semitism, you're going to look at nonviolent. So the director can't look at these ideological precursors unless Homeland Security and the president calls it radical Islamism.
So the president, I surmise, is not going to change his view. He will not use the term radical Islam. At the same time, Donald Trump accused Barack Obama of being an ISIS sympathizer. You say what to that?
Well, this is where, politics and one-upsmanship causes a degeneration from the focus on why this stuff is important. I do think that there's no doubt. I think Senator McCain was correct when, he said, look, at 50 folks in the State Department signed a letter saying we should be doing more in Syria. For the first time, the dovish State Department saying we should be bombing Assad. So there's so many parameters domestically and foreign that this president has surrendered and basically allowed ISIS to advance and put us at risk. And as McCain corrected himself, he said, this is related to his policies. And I think Mr. Trump similarly is just trying to get attention rather than really focus on what I think he's trying to say, which is that the president's policies have left us bare, and we have really nothing effective in decimating ISIS from where they're sitting in Iraq and Syria, and also ideologically here in the homeland. And what are, it's not just ISIS, the mosques and others that are homophobic and anti-Western and conspiracy-oriented are going to be the folks throwing these individuals into a pool that radicalizes them.
So why, the next question is, why is the President of the United States adopting this approach?
So he would tell you, I would say two major answers to that. Number one is, I think we are wedded to the old 20th century paradigm that the foreign Islamic countries dominate our foreign policy. So we want to leave everything the way it is, and we follow the identification of the problem based on what Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, the Islamist countries tell us. And if we call it radical Islam, and this is the pushback I get when I speak all over the country, mosques that are beholden to the old guard, the Islamist mafia, are not going to want us to call it that because they don't want America to take sides within the House of Islam against the theocrats. The second thing is the president is also beholden to the advisors around him. You look at his most recent appointment to the Homeland Security Advisory Committee. He's a radical from the Syrian community who had the temerity to call 9/11 a good thing because it basically put America on watch on its crimes against humanity. All this craziness that the president seems to surround himself with, folks that hate America rather than Muslims that love it against the Islamist nations.
Zuhdi, I always appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Talk to you soon. Dr. Zuhdi Jasser.